to CyberBytes, a podcast. Thanks for coming on, Gabe. And for those that don't know, Gabe Deale is the COO at AKA Identity. Thanks for coming on, Gabe.
That's it. Thank you very much.
Great to have you. How are you finding RSA?
It's fantastic. I love this time of year.
Yeah, it's cool fun. It's good fun. You guys have got a booth every year at the start.
We do, yeah.
Yeah, cool. And that's going to launch tonight. So the fun and games begin.
They begin at 4:30, so be there.
We will be there. Cool. Well, for those that don't know, Gabe, can you tell us who you are and the problem that AKA Identity solves?
Sure. My name is Gabe Deale. I've been in cybersecurity for the past 25 years. I'm kind of a startup junkie, so I've been at 9 different startups.
Wow.
And most notably, I was at a company called Acumen, which later became Optiv. That is now a huge company, and when I joined, we were still trying to figure out how to make our first $1 billion.
Wow.
So that was pretty exciting. I came in early at Silence as well.
Mm-hmm.
Silence had a really nice exit to BlackBerry, so for anybody who's interested in that, I think they're still out there. Mm-hmm. Then the next major notable one was Hidden Layer.
Yeah.
So those guys obviously did very well at the Innovation Sandbox, and I still look forward to seeing all the good stuff that they're going to accomplish. And now I'm at a company called AKA Identity. I'm the Chief Operating Officer, and it's here we go again, right? It's another wild ride. Looking forward to it.
You're a man that loves the startup space. Yeah,
I do very much.
Is it always early? You've just been like first handful of folks in building? That's
exactly right.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those things that I feel like you only get so many years to work professionally, and it's a gift in many ways. And the more that you can take what it is that you've learned and apply it to the next practice and the next practice. I mean, I have a lot of respect for people that stay in the same companies for a long time. But for me, I feel like there's so many early stage companies that are really starved for that kind of knowledge and the wisdom that can be passed down from having done it either successfully or frankly unsuccessfully in other places. So it just feels like a calling for me to go and help people.
You've had those challenges, successes. Now you're seasoned vets in the cyberspace.
I'll say, yeah. There's been some bad with the good, and those are definitely not on my marquee list of the ones that I tend to share. But I'll tell you what, they've helped shape me into the early stage startup pioneer that honestly I see myself as.
Yeah.
A quick one here from Oliver, one of the co-founders of Asperon Search. Our CyberBytes podcast showcases the security ecosystem's most exciting companies, but we do much more. Our talent solutions give security vendors the competitive advantage by building high-performing go-to-market and technical teams globally. If you're looking for your next role or need to hire the best talent in this competitive market, then reach out to us directly via our info@email in the show notes. Let's get back to it.
And what advice, because you've seen many different environments, right, from the startup level, probably the great and maybe not so great. What advice would you maybe give folks that maybe they're at a big company right now and they're considering the startup world? What pieces of advice would you give them? Because you've seen it probably pretty much any dynamic now.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say one of the things when you come into an early stage company, there is a tremendous amount of understanding of what the mission is. It's very raw because the mission is what galvanizes the team.
Sure.
And so there's not multiple layers of management between you and accomplishing the mission. But what that also means is you're not going to get a lot of the comforts, the creature comforts that you might have in the large organizations, because there's more and more people to produce those things. In early stage, you got to be willing to jump in and get the job done, no matter what that job looks like. And so I think you have to expect the unexpected. You have to embrace change, and you have to figure out how to contribute to the bottom line of the company. And the bottom line doesn't necessarily mean profitability, but the bottom line is, what are you doing to advance the mission?
Yeah, interesting. And your background before startup, was it always startups, or did you ever stint at a bigger company?
Yeah, so I started my career at a company called Alcon Labs.
Okay.
And it's a huge company in Fort Worth, big time eye care products and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then from there, I tried to start my own, and it was so early. I mean, I didn't know anything really about the startup space, but I had a passion for growing companies that deliver value to other organizations. And so that was kind of like the beginning of my journey, but it was also some tough sledding, as you might imagine. So it caused me to go seeking what I felt like I was lacking.
Yeah.
And I was able to hook up with some early stage guys early on in Dallas, and just had a fantastic ride with them, learned a tremendous amount.
Yeah.
My next stop was AccuBond.
Yeah, cool. Okay, and AKA then, the identity space is quite hot at the moment, it seems like, right?
It seems like it, doesn't it? Yeah, it's pretty out of control.
Yeah.
In fact, when originally Will asked me to join the team, identity has not been a space that I've focused on in my career. So I've done everything from consulting, SE, SE leadership, consulting leadership, and operational leadership. So I've had this kind of broad career, but I haven't done anything specifically in identity and access management. So this was an opportunity to get in there, flex my muscle a little bit, learn, which I absolutely love to do.
Sure.
And what I realized was the timing is perfect.
Okay.
And that was one of the main things that I've looked for over the past 7 to 8 companies that I've been a part of, is what is the market saying is needed today?
Yeah.
And when you see that gap, you want to be drawn into the industries that are addressing those gaps today.
Yeah.
Because so much of a successful startup is about timing.
Yeah.
You can have a brilliant idea, but if the market is working against you, it's like trying to swim against the tide.
Yeah. And someone that's trying to break in or identify timing, how would you do that?
So a lot of it is really kind of looking at the analysts and what is it that the analysts are really excited about?
Yeah.
What are the topical themes that seem to be coming up in a lot of the podcast conversations? You come to the major conferences. What are the themes? What are they talking about?
Yeah.
And so AI obviously is super hot. I think that's going to be hot for the next 10 years plus. That's not going away anytime soon. But identity and access management, because of the amount of attention that is being paid to its exposure within organizations, it has just put a spotlight on it.
Yeah, for sure. And talking about AKA then, how are you guys doing things differently from others in the identity space?
Yeah, it's a good question. So right now, when you look at the identity and access management space, it's super broad, it's huge. There's all kinds of phenomenal incumbents that have been doing things successfully for a really long time.
Absolutely.
The problem is that it has created silos, these data silos.
Okay.
And so while they have become the authoritative source of information, they're not necessarily the source of truth.
Okay.
And so organizations are struggling to identify these gaps because it looks like a hairball. It's a massive spaghetti mess.
Yeah.
But there are real repercussions to not understanding who has access to what in your organization. And when that changes, are the right people notified that has changed? And so we're creating a layer, which is we call it the identity resolution layer.
Yeah.
And it sits on top and it provides not only visibility, but it provides an intelligence layer. And it's going to be easier for us to be able to initiate actions.
Okay.
Regardless of where certain things happen. Hey, this person's not supposed to have access to this group.
Right.
Or, hey, this person doesn't look anything like his peers in this group.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you like to know about that? These are the kinds of things that we're going to be able to easily surface.
Okay, that's interesting. And I think this probably ties into a bit, you mentioned that, but in terms of challenges that customers are facing in the identity space, you probably mentioned one there. What are you seeing from the customers that you speak to?
Definitely. So we hear a lot about hygiene. So data hygiene has become a huge problem.
Yeah.
The other piece that we hear a lot about is over-provisioning.
Okay.
Tremendous amount of over-provisioning issues. And so organizations are trying to shrink their attack surface constantly.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, you need to first start with, okay, well, who has access to what? Well, if you ask that really, really simple question, you may find that it's an awful lot harder to get the answer than you think.
Yeah.
There's a lot of manual work that tends to follow in order to answer it. And so what we're trying to do is eliminate all of that work, make it to where not only we can get you into a known good state, where only people have access to the things that they actually need, but then we want to keep you in that state on an ongoing basis. Yeah. There's a tremendous amount of technologies that they're talking about at RSA that when you bring that, the new advancements to an age-old problem, you have synergy. Yeah. And that's exactly what we're doing.
That should, exactly. So an old state and then you're bringing something new to
It is.
Yeah.
It's like plumbing. Yeah, it's like plumbing. I mean, at the end of the day, think about it. I mean, identities are kind of core to everything that we do, right? And so imagine if there was confusion in the identity space and what people were actually supposed to have access to.
Yeah.
And that's where we're at. Not to mention you have non-human identities as well.
Right. Yeah.
You have APIs and you have all this other stuff. So you start layering on the problem and you realize how difficult the defender's job is to be right 100% of the time.
Yeah. Almost impossible. Right? Yeah. And in terms of the identity space, I know you're kind of fairly new and still learning the space yourself, which is great. And probably one of the reasons you joined it, right? Yeah.
That's right.
How are you seeing the space maybe evolve in the next 6, 12 months and beyond?
Yeah, that's a really good question. You know, I think some of the stuff that's happening, honestly, in the EU is, I think, going to have an impact here as well, because you're starting to see this federation of like digital identities.
Yeah.
And I think as that starts to be adopted on a broader scale in the EU, I think you're going to start to see a real desire to bring that technology here to the States.
Sure.
And I think that that's going to clear up some things, believe it or not, because now there's not going to be, hey, this one person has 25 different identities within the company.
Yeah.
It's like, no, they are who they are, regardless of whether they're operating in the company or outside of it.
Yeah.
So I think there's going to be an element of that we see more of. I also think that you're going to see more advanced analytics. I think you're going to see intelligent technologies where people can query it with natural language, similar to like ChatGPT.
Yeah.
We'll be able to ask a natural language, hey, how many people have administrative rights to this application? Hey, this person was terminated a few weeks ago.
Right.
Do they still have any access that we may or may not know about?
Yeah.
So I think that you're going to see those kinds of technologies become like, that's going to be table stakes.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then ties in again, but in terms of AKA and identity, what does the future hold for you guys maybe in the next 6 to 12 months?
6 to 12 months, in startup world, 6 to 12 months is, it's a lot of things can be accomplished. Okay, like it could look like a totally different company. So the good news is that within the 6 months, we'll have a really, really strong early version of the product coming out.
Yeah.
MVP will probably be out by that time. It's my guess. This is probably going to be more like beta time frame.
Sure.
Possibly even early GA, depending on how well our design partner program goes.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that that's going to hit the market. Some things that we're also doing right now is we're partnering with quite a few different design partners to understand their challenges.
Yeah.
And depending on the feedback that we're able to get from them, we are going to prioritize what it is that they're looking for.
Sure.
I mean, not only is it a huge thank you, but it's a greater understanding of what can we spend our time working on in order to deliver maximum value in the shortest amount of time possible.
Yeah.
And so I think so much of it is dependent on what kind of feedback we get from them.
Yeah, interesting. Your background fascinating. I like how you're just constantly learning, right? You're constantly Is that one of the reasons you moved to AKA Identity? What's the motivation to start?
It is. So one of the things that I've always been drawn to is I'm an integrator. So at the end of the day, what does that mean? It means I like to build clocks. I don't like to tell time.
Okay.
So I like beautiful clocks that tell accurate time. And in order to do that in a business, to apply it to a business logic, you have to understand all the parts and pieces and how to do things in a balanced way.
Yeah.
Not getting over your skis and doing too much of any one thing, but to grow it in a balanced way and begin with the end in mind.
Yeah.
What is it that we want this organization to look like when it's at 200 people, 500 people, 1,000 people? You don't wait until you get to that point to begin building that infrastructure because you'll never catch up.
Sure.
So what you do is you train people to the disciplines and you start putting the business process in place. And as a result, people just absorb it because it's how they've always done it. And that's the way, in my opinion, to build the most resilient organization and one that can really scale for hypergrowth.
Yeah, the osmosis piece. And what's the best piece of advice you've ever got given?
Best piece of advice, I think, was as a leader, our job is to take care of our people.
Yeah.
Our people take care of the mission, and the mission takes care of us. So fundamentally, as long as you as the leader don't get that backwards, and try to get involved directly in the mission, and instead you resource your team and you provide them clarity, and you make sure that the goal is unwavering, and you allow them to do what it is that you hired them to do. I have found that not only keeps your priorities in check, but it allows you essentially to be a better coach. Because let's face it, at the end of the day, as much as the coaches want to get in and play the game, that's not their job. And you have to think very differently as an executive leader. You have to be able to shape the vision and inspire people to reach for something. So I just feel like that's probably the most impactful feedback I've ever
It's
received.
interesting. I link it like to sporting teams, for example. It's a very close analogy, I believe, business to sporting. You look at the best teams, the vision, the cohesivity. I'm a big soccer fan, football fan.
Of course,
What Arsenal have done, I link it to that, Arteta, and it's like, it's getting that cohesive, having a shared vision, and everyone's on that goal, and it's the same. It sounds like that's what you've been taught, and that's what you're building it.
Absolutely. There's no question about it. And I think that so early with early stage startups, it is something that you struggle with. Because you have a lot of usually type A personalities. They're very passionate about the mission and everybody wants to solve the problem. So everything looks like a fumble. They're constantly jumping on the ball, and it's like, no, you have to resist that. I would also say you have to be patient. Because you're bringing people in and you want to empower them to be successful at what they do, but sometimes the way that they do things and the way you want them done are going to look a little bit differently at first. So you have to be patient and really allow people, create an environment that allows people to test new ideas. Because the moment that you come over the top and you try to prevent that from happening, you cause a culture that is afraid to take risks. And what is a startup? It's a risky venture, right? And you want people to think outside the box, move fast, but move purposefully. And don't worry about breaking things from time to time. That's okay. You're not going to do any permanent damage.
And to wrap this up, I mean, it's a pleasure having you on, Gabe, so I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
If you could rewind the clock, say 10, 15, 20 years, knowing now what you know now, what would you tell your younger self?
Well, that's a really good question. I honestly would say take time to enjoy it. Take time to enjoy it, because I spent a lot of my years very ambitious, chasing, working really hard, traveling tremendous amounts, and paid the taxes on the home front as a result of that. And over the years, I've forged some unbelievably strong and phenomenal friendships, because that's what being in the trenches does. It forges, you are in the crucible together, right? And so I have some phenomenal friends, but I think that they would probably say the same thing. Sometimes you're able to capture lightning in a bottle, but you're so focused on why you're doing it, the mission, all these things, that you forget to enjoy it.
So true,
And it's like, then you always reminisce and you look back on those years later and you're like, those were phenomenal times. I wish I could have them back. And it's like, you have them now. Enjoy them while you can.
Okay, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me.
See you soon.
If you are still listening, thanks for hanging in there, and I hope you enjoyed this special RSA episode. If you did, then please hit the like and subscribe button, and of course share this with your colleagues and friends. If you are a candidate looking for your next role within cybersecurity, or a hiring manager looking to build out your technical or go-to-market teams, then please reach out to me directly on LinkedIn or via email. See you soon.